Cate Blanchett, Warwick Thornton.
Hi.
Welcome to 7:30.
Thank you for having us.
Now, you originally wrote this story, if I'm right, 18 years ago, is that right?
Yeah.
What was
yeah.
the original spark for it?
Being a child and going to a boarding school, a place called Salvador College in New Norcia, run by Spanish Benedictine monks. And as a child, I'd never been into a church. And I was a bit of a ratbag on the streets of Alice Springs, and my mother went, right, you're boring. Up to boarding school you go. Hey ho, in the you know, the Johnny Ramone kind of way. Hey, oh, let's go. And walking into a church for the first time and then seeing this life-size, you know, I'd seen images, obviously, of Jesus and, you know, and the torture. But seeing it for the first time, I was like, whoa, this is really scary, you know? And, you know...
What's he done? Can't someone get him down?
Can't he get down and we give him a good feed? He's a bit skinny at the moment, and, you know, get him to bed and put, you know, fix those, heal those sores.
That's the image that stayed with you?
Yeah, and from that is, you know, obviously the spark. But, you know, 18 years ago, I was a very different human being to who I am today. I've
In what way?
Lived and loved and cried and divorced and remarried and permanently broke and then incredibly rich. You know, just life. And you know, all those beautiful things in life, and I've tasted food that I've never tasted. So I'm a very different human being. So it was kind of written by a child.
And so what's the difference? What is that difference between the child writer and the adult writer?
I'm slower, calmer, not competent. I'm still terrible at everything. But what do you call it? No, what's that?
That's a humble brag if ever I heard one.
Comfortable, just comfortable,
Yeah.
calmer. You know what I mean? The original script had some anger in it, and it's sort of like looking at Australia and who we are, and rebalancing that to say that we're all trying to survive.
Kate, so I know that the original idea was that the co-lead was to be a male character, a priest. It becomes you, that wonderful character of the nun.
Father and the Son.
Father and Son. How did that transformation come about, that you became the lead and it becomes the nun living with this mystery, this little secret she's trying to keep?
Well, first and foremost, it just came out of Andrew Upton and I's desire to work with Warwick, and so we got chatting about a whole number of things. And then he said, you know, I've had this script that I've been developing with Kath Shelper, and he pulled it out of his drawer and said, look, I don't know what you think of it. I don't even know what I think of it. You know, Warwick said, and there wasn't a part for me. So I said, well, maybe we can help you produce it. And then Andrew said, well, what if you flipped it so that the priest became a nun? And then suddenly all of this strangeness emerged. And what happened was, obviously, when you've got a nun officiating mass, which doesn't even happen now, but certainly didn't happen in the 1940s. You have a nun who herself is hiding from the world, who is has secrets, a dark past, and so suddenly the monastery became a place of an island of refuge for all of them against the kind of the malevolence of the outside world. Because of course we all know, even though this film doesn't directly articulate it, that these boys have been taken off country, that they are stolen, and that they're going off to either be cannon fodder or to be slave labour on farms. And so suddenly my character became somebody, rather than someone who was trying to exploit and manipulate those children, someone who was trying to protect them under the guise of, you know, baptising them into a faith to protect them against the outside world.
So what went away with the male priest character, he's a brother, isn't he? Would have been a brother. What went with him? Was it a darker film?
A darker poster.
A darker poster for sure. I mean, we were very aware of what the audience would read into that image. But what became interesting was that it's a film about absent fathers. And so I think that's a lot, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think often in, and you know, you hear it a lot in, Black American culture, is that fathers often get taken away or estranged from their sons. And so this idea that this spectre of a father who perhaps wasn't such a great priest hangs over all of them, and that they've all got a secret that you feel is just bubbling, you know, underneath.
Yeah, I never had a father, so, you know, he died when I was 1, I think.
My father died when I was 10.
Yeah, you know, subliminally I'm doing that all the time. You know what I mean? It's absent alive, there's no father in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All sorts of, and maybe that's all just coming through.
Did you actually
Therapy.
talk about the absence of your fathers when you were having the very long preliminary conversations about
No,
the
but
film?
we're prepared to have that therapy session now.
Yeah. So you ready?
Yeah.
We'll clock on. Okay. So,
No, it's funny. It's because I think that it's a strange thing about making a movie. You can write something and you think you understand it, and you start to film it, and then you get a deeper understanding, and then you get into post-production process with it, and it's not until you see it with an audience that you realise fully the resonances that are there. And I think that what is so powerful about the story and the way Warwick works as a filmmaker is that it's a fable-like quality to this story, and that there are archetypes that transcend the present moment, but it also coming out in Australia at this time, and also internationally, where there's a really potent reckoning, you know, in England, where I'm currently living, you know, the Windrush generation and the
just for our
colonial
audience,
past. And
that's the generation of people who came from the Caribbean to the UK.
yes, of course. I mean, it's very much alive. So it's sort of being dropped in a time where people are reading certain meanings into it, which is a really exciting thing. And I'd be curious to see what people make of the film in 20 or 30 years' time.
Yes, that extraordinary intersection, I don't know even who I'm looking at here because it's so extraordinary, the intersection between Indigenous spirituality and what you were describing before, that young boy trying to understand what the crucifix figure is.
Yeah.
Was that
That's
sort of
part of
wonderful magic ball of the film always there?
yeah, the orb. We call it the orb. But, you know, or you can call it his comfort blanket or his, you know, his spiritual guidance.
But did you two talk about it when you were talking about the film?
Yeah, well, you know, it's always been there, and it's always been, you know, it's always a metaphor for a magical power, something special. You know, but what was important in the film originally, this is before Cate came along, but with Cath, I've always talked about all we want to do is get it on the board. You know what I mean? It's sort of like for Christianity to tackle Indigenous spirituality and culture in this way, and this magical piece of spark, by them actually recognising it, we're on the board. It's not about who wins or who loses, it's about if you recognise what we have and how special it is, even if you don't like it and you want to get rid of it and you want to kill it, just by recognising it, we're on the board and we can actually start having a conversation.
Yes, but there is a moment of terrible loss, just for the audience. I'll just say this, when the boy loses his magic powers.
Yes, it's a very
That is a
poignant
moment of crushing
It's a tragedy.
loss.
It's you know, you can read it as in a blink of an eye, something just becomes extinct. You know what I mean? And that was happening a lot, and it's still happening today. You know what I mean? And it's just like and then you just keep moving on, and it's like, hang on, let's just back up a bit. What just happened? You know, and that's important because it happens that way.
But it is interesting, I think, because if you had made the film 18 years ago, there would have been a like a black hole in a way that opened up into which that boy's loss fell. But you really worked with the ending, the fact that you may lose it on the surface, but that sense of deep, ancient, connected, connection to land and place and country and family,
and spirit.
you cannot lose that. It cannot be killed.
I actually, how your decision, apart from wanting to work with Warwick and the nature of the material, and then in this time, but also how important was it, or how much of a draw was it for you to be back in an Australian landscape?
Well, I mean, you can never control the time in which, or the audience reaction. I mean, that is just, chance and luck. But it was, in the end, very director-driven. I'd always admired Warwick's work, not only as a director, but as a DP, and you know, just what you've been choosing to do, like the personal investigations. I just wanted to be part of that conversation. And Australia is an incredibly magnetic country with a very unique, particular history. So I'm constantly drawing from it. And the last time I was back, we made a series kind of a prequel to Offshore Detention called Stateless. And and before that, it had been a very long time since I've been back here. I love the crews here. I love the attitude to filmmaking, and you know, the light, the space. And we had the incredible support of the South Australian Film Corporation. And I made my very first featurette over there, so it was like a homecoming for me. I really wanted to be back.
I just want to talk about the location, that's actually some of the practicalities of the film, because they're unusual in the sense that you built this set outside of Burra in South Australia. Were you in more of a bubble than is usual? And if so, did that change the process of making the film?
And, you know, you stand on a hill and you go, this is the right place to build this. And, you know, because of, you know, I'm a cinematographer and I shot the film, so it's all about the visuals to start with. And if we start with beautiful visuals, we're in a good place, you know what I mean? The story might be crap, but geez, it look good.
And what about being in that one, you know, that one place together? Because almost all, not all the film, but almost all the film takes place.
It was a gift.
It was a gift, yeah. You know what I mean? It was quite nurturing. It was sort of, the wheat was womb-like in a strange way, you know what I mean? Especially with these children.
Very Terrence Malick, really.
Yeah,
So
yeah, oh, you
beautiful.
know, yeah.
He'd be lucky to be you, but still. Just
No, well, you know, there's Malick in it, there's, you know, there's a bit of Picnic at Hanging Rock, there's a little bit of Tracy Moffat, you know, bedevilled in there, you know what I mean? So,
But everyone was growing rapeseed, and so we convinced the farmer to grow wheat at a time when it was not economically viable.
Films are wonderful.
Yes,
Canola, yeah,
but then of
canola,
course,
yeah.
canola, and then the price of wheat shut up, so he was very, very happy.
yeah.
Unintended
Yes, but-
consequences.
Well, sadly, it was the war in Ukraine that made wheat
Yes.
go bang.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, into that bubble or into that world that you created there, of course, somewhat unusually, comes a gaggle of children. Just in terms of the direction of the children, this is one of the most remarkable things about the film. I don't think I've ever seen a film with so many children in it where there isn't any overacting. You know, there's wonderful child actors, of course, but there isn't a single, I know there's no dialogue or very little dialogue for them, but how did you work with those children in that place, both of you, really?
Mine was based on pure fear. You know, the 8-seater bus would pull up, and then this massive
Arms
and legs and dust and hair would just sort of come out, and the blood would drain, and it's like, it just completely did not prepare myself for this. You know what I mean? So I've got Diva of the Year, and kids going, Where's the lollies?
Yes.
But also mother of four.
Mother of four.
Yes,
Yeah.
3
not
boys.
for nothing. Yeah.
But they really looked. I mean, it was extraordinary. They became a band of brothers. They all lived together. Their families were all together in Burra, and so it became a community. And what was fantastic about what Warwick and Nick, our editor, did was every Friday night was movie night. So having none of them had ever been on a film set before, and Warwick said, let's just show them what a long shot is, what a close-up is. And I know we're spending a lot of time filming your feet, but when we put it in slow motion and we juxtapose it against you all moving around, and they realised, oh, even though I'm in the back of shot, if I do that, it's really distracting. So it was like a masterclass in learning how to use a frame. And they're such fast learners, as one in particular. And so by the second week, they were so well oiled, and they would just focus. And they were also there to support one another.
And
so
there's a little off-cut scene where you're doing a rehearsal, you're blocking out the scene where you run into their dormitory and wake them up. What was that rehearsal like for you working with that group? I know you say they were very quick, they were very good, but how different is it for you working with completely untutored actors?
Look, I'm always nervous when a child, even a child who's well versed at being on set, is there. There's a very particular duty of care, because there is a fast and furious nature to making films, particularly when you're open to the elements and you're working, quickly because of the budget size. But I realised that they were so porous and able to learn. So be quickly saying, look, this shot's on you. I'm going to come and do this. What do you think you might do? And so we very quickly sort of developed a shorthand.
And talk to me about working with Aswan Reid, because clearly he is an extraordinarily luminous, quicksilver presence, but with depth. It's hard. The layers in that boy are hard to convey in words for anybody who hasn't seen the film yet. They will. What was it like being on set with him?
He was just, he is a magnet. And he very quickly understood and respected he was curious about everything. He wanted to know what the dolly grip did, what the sound department did, what the hair and makeup did. He was curious about every single department and worked out what his relationship needed to be with them. And he developed very quickly through working with you, but I think watching Wayne Blair and Deb Mailman, watching what they did. And he was the fastest learner. I mean, I learned so much from him. And obviously, he does have a very small, well, he says about 2 or 3 words. Yeah. So it all is about his and some probably can't say the other word on national television, can we, that he said?
No.
But he was a very, very fast learner. So I found him inspiring, and you realise that you weren't talking to just any child. You were whether he becomes an actor or not. He has an energy and an intelligence and a hunger for experience that I think I always want him to be in my life. I want to be in his life.
Yeah, I never recognised it, but actually there was sort of the art imitating life imitating art, because we took this child from, the community he comes from is Kirikura, which is 800 kilometres from Alice Springs. We took this child and we took him to South Australia and we put him on a film shoot, which is quite similar to we take this child in the movie, the new boy's taken from the desert and he's taken to an orphanage. And the survival tactics that the new boy was doing in the film, he was kind of doing on set. He's doing it, working the same way. So, yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Did he ever talk about the Christian elements of it, the sort of scary, beautiful crucifix that he's acting with, or you don't know what's really going on in the little boy's mind?
We on purposely shot it linearly.
In sequence. That's what I say. I can't say the word.
Thank you. So that he could understand and the process, and that it gets darker and darker and darker, and there's obviously turning, so he could build into that sort of stuff. It wasn't like he's suddenly doing things with Jesus
out of nowhere,
like right from the beginning. Yeah,
like you did as a child. Yeah. Just talk to me a little bit about directing Cate Blanchett, because suddenly you've got someone, and you're sitting there, but an extraordinary actress who's giving an extraordinary performance.
Yeah.
Tell me about the experience of directing.
It starts with fear and being scared and being not worthy.
Well, that's exactly how I felt. It doesn't go away.
And then it turns into pure trust and that beautiful conversation before a scene. We'd had a lot of conversations about the film, but not necessarily about singular scenes. And having an openness to because Kate's purely thinking about her character. And I'm thinking about 28 characters. And I'm kind of being a little bit watery and washy, you know what I mean? And I'm not very good at the perfect director soundbite about who you are and how you're going to do this, because I don't know.
But also, I don't need that.
No, you don't. Yeah. So it starts with fear, and then it turns into trust, and then it's total family and respect and love. You know what I mean? I'm not out to trip Cate out. Kate's not out to trip me.
There's a lot of love on that set. I think that's obvious for the audience. Let me just ask you this, because I'd like to talk to you all day, but sadly I'm not allowed to. The voice is obviously in the foreground, not the background now, for everything we think about in relation to Indigenous stories. Did you think about it at all while you were filming, or have you thought about it since?
No,
in relation
it was
to the film?
never written with this what's happening right now in mind, and it's never been rewritten to fit that. But I do make movies. I do have a voice, and I have a platform, and I have a 150-foot screen to say what I want to say. But so my job and what I need to do as an Indigenous person is give a voice to the voiceless. Now, that is so important to me. Samson Delilah does that. Most films I do, it's about giving people who are my people, my grandparents, my ancestors, and my grandchildren, a voice that they've never had, and that's incredibly important for me. So it's just natural progression. So, you know, you can read the voice into this film, but it was never written that way. You know, it's a strange time, and you know, I've not this probably isn't your view, but I feel that we're in a country that feels like a spoiled single child who's only learnt the word no, and one day needs to learn the word yes.
Yes, I mean, it is a strange time, but it's an extraordinary time for an extraordinary country, and we are such a courageous, pioneering. There's so many things happen here first, and there's this incredible opportunity to embrace our unique history, shared history. You know, with all of its missteps and all of its successes, to actually evolve into a really modern democracy, like New Zealand, like Canada. And I think it does make me sad that there's a lot of fear being generated around a really positive moment for us as a nation. And, you know, we have to remember that the primacy of Parliament is not under threat. It's not under threat. It's just that, you know, Parliament is a place where the important issues of the day are debated, and all points of view are listened to, and the government, the Parliament makes legislation, they make decisions, the Parliament makes those decisions. But there's a certain voice that is never really, in a non-partisan way, in an eternal way, represented at that table, and that's an Indigenous voice. And it's time we evolved to include all Australians. And it's the more inclusive cultures are, the more vibrant they are. And I think it'll be a sad moment if we miss this opportunity. We don't want to look back. You know, you think, you know, women only achieved suffrage 120 years ago, and at that time when that vote was happening, change felt terrible, and the debate was all about the society's going to collapse and we don't know what's going to happen. What's going to happen if women get the vote? Now, can we imagine a world in Australia where women didn't have the right to vote, where their voices weren't heard? No, we can't. And so I'm hoping in another 120 years' time we'll look back at this moment and say, can you believe we almost missed that opportunity?
Absolutely.
You know, it's a great moment for this wonderful country.
Cate Blanchett, Warwick Thornton, it's a film of extraordinary luminous beauty. Thank you for talking to us about it.
You're a luminous beauty.
It's a true thing.